2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're good. Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order and recognize that we are meeting on the traditional territories of the Apachetit and the Tishat First Nation and everywhere else on Vancouver Island. So I'd like approval of the agenda, please. Got a mover and a seconder, Diane. Does anybody want to add or take away? Okay, all in favor? Carried. And we have the minutes of the meeting of September 15th, 2020.
Move approval of minutes.
And we've got a seconder there.
Second.
And any arrows or omissions, stuff you didn't say? It's easy to do on Zoom because it could be your kid in the background. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. And request for decisions. I'll get in the nitty gritty here. So who's going to carry the committee works? What's it? I don't have the right agenda. Sorry, hang in a second. I'll get. I got it. I just punched the wrong one. Sorry. Oh. Well, we'll get this afternoon's meeting over first, and then we'll go to this meeting. And so I'll correct that. The meeting of, do we have September the 2nd on that first one? Or? Yeah. Okay, we're good. Okay, all right. Now we got Alberni Valley Curbside Recycling Depot contract extensions. And that, I guess, would be Ms. Bruin.
Thank you, through the chair. All right. So what we're looking to do is extend the existing curbside collection contract. We have a contract with Waste Management for operation of the depot as well as the curbside collection. We, when we were looking at three-stream recycling collection, we extended the last contract for 1 year to give us time so that we could align the ending of this contract, because we collect in the city boundaries as well as Beaver Creek for recycling. And we wanted to align that so when we do the switch over to three-stream, that it sort of lines up and we're not trying to get a contract to cover the city and Beaver Creek and then try and switch that midway. It's just a lot easier for us to keep it as one contract. So what we're recommending is that we extend the contract. We've negotiated with Waste Management. They understand our situation. And what we're looking at doing is basically extending until April. I believe we're extending till, sorry, it was the technology messed me up a little bit this morning. We're going to end the contract from March 31st, but we have the flexibility to extend that month by month, depending on when we actually set that up. We have closing for the carts and the organics processing, which will really dictate what our timelines end up becoming for the three-stream implementation, but we know we're shooting for early spring, summer. So that gives us all the flexibility we need. Waste Management has agreed to a 3% increase, which is reasonable and in line with CPI. So we're recommending that we do the extension for that. For Third Avenue Recycling Depot, we're getting to the end of our operation contract with that. We would like to put it out for tender or for RFP for social procurement. We just need some more time to do that. We're running out of time. We don't have enough before the end of the contract. So we're asking for a 6-month extension of that as well. Any questions?
Dr. Jack.
So I'd like to move that the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee recommend that the ACRD Board of Directors authorize the CAO to negotiate and execute a contract extension with Waste Management for curbside recycling collection in the Alberni Valley until March 31st, 2021, with the ability to extend up to October 31st, 2021.
Second that, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So any questions on this? Okay, so right now, just refresh my memory, the rural, like Beaver Creek is Nicklin, isn't it? Or is it Waste Management?
It's all under one contract.
Oh,
so
okay.
we also will have to issue an RFP tender for just that small portion of the collection contract.
Okay.
And we have until, this will give us time to do that. We have basically have until at earliest March 31st.
Okay. Alrighty, any other questions? Okay, on the motion, all in favor? Anybody opposed? Doesn't want garbage picked up? No, it's recycling, sorry. Okay, on to the next thing. So we get two
Yeah.
in the same, sorry, Director Jack.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'll move that the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee recommend that the ACRD Board of Directors authorize the CAO to negotiate and execute a contract extension with Waste Management for the operation of the 3rd Avenue Recycling Depot until May 31st, 2021, with the ability to extend up to November 30th, 2021.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anything on this? Yes, Director Cote.
Thank you. On page 11, there's a graph and it's not that understandable.
Yes. Sorry, are we on to the next item? Yeah. Okay,
No.
sorry.
Still on A.
Wait, we're still on there.
We're still on 4A.
Yeah, we'll
Okay,
get,
sorry. Yeah, it was on page 11.
Yeah.
Sorry.
so just on the 3rd Avenue recycling thing, I've been down there a couple of times. It just seems illogical, like it's not user friendly. And I'm wondering about all of that gating and everything else that, isn't there something else we can do there? I mean, just if you've got mixed recycling, like a bunch of stuff, then you're walking in one way and out the other way and down the side and back and forth. And it just seems like if people kept their distance, it shouldn't be a problem. I mean, it should be able to just go right in.
Excellent feedback. We did have recycling experts come in from the Nanaimo Recycling Exchange and provide the suggestions for the change to meet the COVID safety requirements, and did the design based on that. We implemented those changes the beginning of October, and we said, let's run this for a month because there was skeptical people, perhaps including myself. And we said, let's look at this for a month and we'll do a review of it. So we have a meeting next week to talk with the contractors and do a review. So I really appreciate that feedback. And we're going to take that into consideration and look at what we want that is going to work best at that facility and still meet the safety requirements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else on this? Okay, we have a motion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Gee, bunch of agreeable people today. Okay, on to the next thing with regards to solid waste tipping rates.
All right, through the chair. So
I'll repeat my question.
Maybe I'll try to do an overview of the report and we'll see if this helps at all. So we changed the rates in November 2019. We increased our weighed rate from 120 to 130 a ton. The reason we did that was basically we suspected that we had some importing of garbage, and that was evidenced through our waste audit that we did at the landfill, and we were seeing loads coming in from out of region. And so we instituted a higher rate. We also were very strict. We did a rolled enforcement of double rates for mixed loads. That means any load that has recyclable materials, mostly because of Nanaimo, who does always charge that rate. Therefore, it may have been an incentive for commercial loads to come here because they could pay $120 instead of $360 in our neighbor's location. So we changed those rates and we did see a decrease in commercial volumes, which is good. It is a reduction of revenue, but we want to extend the landfill life. That is a broader objective for us. And the less solid waste we receive, the less cost it is, the longer we can extend the life of the landfill. So that was a very positive change, and it went relatively smoothly. The other change that we made was that we changed the bag rates from $2 a bag with no minimum charge.
For me,
$4
this
a bag.
is in the purchasing.
$3 a bag with a $6 minimum. And we did that again to try and be consistent with other regions. We had a minimum rate of $8 and $10 in our two neighboring regional districts. And then what I've tried to do is sort of demonstrate in this graph, and I'll talk you through it. Hopefully it'll be more helpful. I pulled back the data just looking at how much traffic we get bringing how many numbers of bags and how this has changed that. So if we look at the different colors, we have dark blue, which is people bringing 1 bag, red, which is people bringing 2 bags of garbage in their load, green is 3 bags, purple is 4 bags, and light blue is 5 bags. And so if we go back a year before we made this change, we can see that the most trips coming in are with 1 bag. And so that was about 1,000 trips a month. And we go along, and that's just your seasonal difference as we go through. And then when we make the change in October, November 2019, you can see in the middle of the graph, what we see is the light blue drops off because we no longer charge for 5 bags. That is just weighed garbage if you're bringing that much. And consequently, the 4 bags, which is the purple, bumps up because then people are bringing 5 bags of garbage or 4 bags of garbage instead of 5. So we know that the 4 bag rate started to absorb some of that, what was a 5 bag rate, which is fine. And then we see the dark blue, which is the 1 bag trips, jump down quite a bit. So we go down to about 400 people are bringing about 400 trips a month are just 1 bag of garbage. Similarly, the 3 bags is about 400. And in the 2 and 4 trips, for whatever reason, run around the 600 mark. So we see that. Overall, we've seen a significant drop in traffic coming with bagged garbage because of that. So that would be a result of people who were just going to bring 1 bag of garbage, they wait twice the amount of time and come half as much. So we see a reduction in that regard. Also, some of the trips get shifted into the weighed category instead of the bagged category because we no longer have a rate for the 5 bags. So it has resulted in a decrease in an average of 13%. That is what we have seen as a result of that. We've also had a few complications this past year. So I had hoped to have some pretty clean data when we came back to look at this. We have to look at it in the context of COVID. So the other thing that happened is obviously 3rd Avenue closed down, and that drove a ton of traffic to the landfill for recycling only, which was what we did. We did that on purpose because we have the facilities there. We've expanded what is received at the landfill. It's all been really great for the landfill and I think for the community to now have 2 locations for options. And on October 1st, when we reopened, the data that I was looking at for this report, it really wasn't enough for me to really say how much of that traffic that was now shifted to go to the landfill is going to stick there versus all shift back to 3rd Avenue. So I don't know, but it has dropped down just talking with the landfill staff. So that's good because midsummer, what we were seeing was extremely long lineups at the landfill because we had a lot of recycling going there. Everything had to go through the scale. And so we need to look at that. It has implications on the commercial haulers, right, who have to wait for a very long time in the lineup. Also, just it's inconvenient for people. And that was the intention of actually putting in a 2 bag minimum, was to reduce traffic. So we had that unfortunate situation. The thing that we noticed as well is feedback. We didn't really get much feedback as far as the weighed rate change. People weren't too upset whether it was $120 or $130 a ton. That's because it's very little noticeable. The bagged rate, we did see a significant feedback at the beginning. People were frustrated because they were originally paying $2 and now the minimum that they could pay was $6. However, that has fallen off, as happens with most changes with landfill rates and fees. And to staff specifically and at the scale house, we've seen it drop off to the point where it's sort of what we would have expected. So we don't think that that we have a huge contingent of the population that are upset about this currently. And what would be nice is to get really a better sense of really more data to say whether we should look at changing this or not. The rates are in line with our neighbors. They're not outrageously high. And so really the recommendation is that we look at a follow-up review after we've implemented the organics diversion for the city of Port Alberni. The other thing that we'll see when we do that, besides just diverting organics, is that yard waste will be accepted in those green bins. So that will also reduce traffic, because the objective, again, with having a minimum tipping fee, especially for the bagged rates, is to manage those traffic volumes. The next report as well, I think coming up, or the one after that, is really talking about our landfill layout design upgrades, which may also address that issue. So we've got a lot of variables coming up, and I think that we would recommend that we wait until some of those changes have been made to consider making any other changes to the rates. When we change rates, it's nice to do it as infrequently as possible to reduce the frustration from the public.
Dakota.
Thank you. Thanks for the report. And, you know, I know what you're driving at and where you're trying to go. But the regional district, because the office is closed through COVID, I believe that a lot of the calls have knocked off and it's reverting to the directors. Myself, I still get calls regarding the 1-2 bag limit. People want to see it go back to 1, and there's a reason. It's because right now it's bear season, and people are putting their garbage to the side and trying to collect two bags, and there's a lot of bears that are breaking into people's garages or whatever after their garbage. So that is a problem right now that I'm not sure that staff are aware of, but I definitely am. Down on my street, I hear from the neighbors. I see the bear. The bear has been in my compost, which turned it over for me. Well, that was wonderful. But it is a problem. And I'm hearing about it. So I do tell people, you know, ask them to call staff and let them know. They feel like they've done their duty by calling me. So I knew this was coming forward at this time, so I saved it all for now. Also, I'd like to know if you've been going through the garbage again and finding out if there's a bunch of recycle that is mixed in with the garbage now. I know that a lot of the complaints were saying, well, that's it, I'm not going to recycle anymore. I might as well fill up 2 bags rather than try to divert it. So I see that as another problem. And I think it needs a lot of education to bring things forward to where staff would like it to be. But I think that it needs to go in steps. And right now, I think that the 2 bag is still a big issue in my community. Thanks.
We haven't done another waste audit yet. We may do one in the following year, but we're actually looking to save. It is an expensive endeavor. We're looking to do a full waste audit once we have the organics diversion in place and see how effective that is on the broad scale, which will also give us a sense of, because we do it by region, and we will even be able to look and see if there's been a change in the recycling amounts by area. To get that data, again, because of the timelines, I'm thinking it would be probably a year once we have the data and had it in front of us to look and see. So not short turnaround on that.
So in Beaver Creek, I've been getting all kinds of different phone calls and emails about things that I normally wouldn't get phone calls and emails about on a normal day, but I haven't had one comment with regards to, I did have one with regards to the compostable products like leaves and branches and things. But I mean, that's easy enough to explain away. And now that they're not charging for loads of grass, lawn clippings, not grass, you're probably still got to pay for that. But I mean, I went out there yesterday with a whole load, flat deck load of decorative grass, and it was no charge. And so, I mean, you can't complain about that, I don't think. And it was, everything went very well. So, so I've got Director Bodner and Director Jack as well.
Thank you to the chair. I'm wondering, Director Code, you seem to have good communication out there in Sprout Lake. Would it be possible for people who only have one bag of garbage to maybe contact other people who have one bag, so that we could maybe even taking turns going to the landfill? I haven't heard anything from Cherry Creek one way or the other, but if something isn't able to be changed within a long period of time, perhaps that might be one way to look at it. Thank you.
So my comment I forgot to make in there was, I mean, the city has bear-proof garbage containers, which could be purchased. I'm sure that they would sell them to whoever walked in the door, but or whoever was outside the door, and they could throw them to. So I mean, that might be another option. Yes. Oh, I've got Director Jack in front of you, sir.
Sorry, I was muted. I was just going to move the motion. So are we okay for that?
Okay, sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I will move that the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee recommend that the staff complete a follow-up review of rates after the implementation of organics diversion in the city of Port Alberni.
Seconder?
Mr. Chair.
Yep. Okay, so Director Cote, and we got anybody else lined up there? Nope.
Thank you. So I have seen, I've had a call from a neighbor that said that he's hauling garbage. So he's collecting garbage from a few of the neighbors and bringing it, and I'm sure that it's more than 4 bags. So that takes him right out of that category of per bag. Also, I have had a call from one of our favorite residents, so Joe Van Bergen, looking for a bear-proof garbage. And I know of other people who are dealing with the bears. There is quite a few of them this year, so it is a problem right now.
So that might be a connection we need to make, is with the city, to see if we can either get a few of them here, or we could consign them, or that they could have a route directly to get them from the city.
We just closed our cart purchase RFP, and as part of that, we did request pricing for carts. So the idea being is we could, depending on how things roll out, but even in the short term, we could purchase them at the lowest cost possible, because we'll have the purchasing power, and then sell them at cost like we did for the composters. So definitely that's an option, and they would be the bear-proofed options, which would be great.
Yeah, I mean, they are a good container. They, you know, I mean, bears almost get into anything, but they are well built and well restrained. Do we have somebody else up there? No, I don't think so. So we got a motion on the floor. Anything else on the motion? All in favor? Opposed? Right, vote recorded, just for fun. Okay, so on to the next thing. So with this one, we can bring out our pillows because it's a big one.
Try and make it exciting. You let me know when I'm done if it was exciting enough or not. So what I'd like to do is just sort of run through a summary. And yes, Director McNabb, it is a very long report of sort of the first couple of components are actually from the report. I did include a large section just on the provincial guidelines, just as background if anybody wants to read. So I'll just run through the presentation and then answer questions, hopefully. So this is the initial presentation of the SOMAS flood management plan, and really the purpose today is to present it to the committee and to the public. I wanted to make sure it was going, presented to the directors that were directly affected by this, so that falls within this committee, sort of the best way to do that, and also have it so that it's out in the public realm I'll talk a little bit sort of about the next steps in that. And really, there's two components. There's the mitigation options, and then there's also how we apply specifically the flood construction maps that are here. So most of this was presented in March, I think literally a day or two before the state of emergency was declared. So some of you were there. So the draft of this has been available for some time, but these are the finalized plans. So I just want to give a brief overview of the flood construction levels. And these apply more to the rural planning and building inspection services, which are only the electoral area directors. And so the flood construction and the Local Government Act provides several options for applying the flood construction levels within that. So currently we have some development permits that address flood levels within a certain distance of either the river or the lake. And then also, so that's under a natural hazard. And then sorry, find my notes here. And then and I just want to note sort of these maps cover a much larger area than we had some flood mapping that was done in the 90s. And this greatly expands it and includes it up to both Great Central Lake and Sprout Lake and the river areas in there. And again, it covers not all of Sprout Lake, but the most developed parts of Sprout Lake. So currently there's development permits in place within 30 meters of the rivers and 15 meters of Sprout Lake. And in addition, the zoning bylaw addresses where you construct, how you construct, so that's the flood construction level. And where we don't have flood mapping, which is most of the areas we're seeing building permits and development, specifically around Sprout Lake, we require, which follows the provincial guideline, that habitable space be constructed 3 meters or 10 feet above the natural boundary. And as we've seen for some flood events in the past few years, that's not necessarily adequate. As you've seen, new builds or buildings under construction, actually the water levels getting to close to that habitable space. And just want to be clear that sort of as our first initial assessment of the flood construction levels in the maps, that may change, or it did change, from what we currently have. And I just also want to talk a little bit about the flood construction levels. So they are not, while they appear as lines on the map, they are not two-dimensional, they're three-dimensional. So they're actually a horizontal setback. So, and that is explained on page 47 of the agenda. There's a diagram that explains how the flood construction levels work, and even addresses, the example shows where the ground, and again, depending on sort of where you are within your setbacks and other development permits, there is an ability to build up to make sure you're out of the flood construction level. And then I just wanted to talk briefly about mitigation options. So this is on page 32 and 33 of the agendas. And the report talked about several mitigation options, and several of those, or most of those, came out of consultation with the stakeholder group that was part of this project. And then specifically took a closer look, and I just want to say they took a closer look and provided some examples or options for mitigations on two components. So the first was the modifying the outlet of Sprout Lake. And really, this was what drove this project to get started. It was concerns about flooding, specifically around Sprout Lake. They reviewed 4 modification options, and the first 3 did not result in a substantial lake level reduction. So this involved, one of the options was removing the weir, and the other one was, which is referred to in the report as Bob's Rock. There's a rock that's just below the weir, and the report explains sort of the modeling and why that didn't happen. The fourth option was widening a section just down. It's downstream of the weir, so the area just above the old logging bridge, and the report identifies that could result in a measurable reduction in lake level. So that would be 0.5 0.15 of a meter, so 15 centimeters. But it also has an increase in discharge, so it would increase discharge by 6.3%. So those, you know, they can't be looked at in isolation. We can't just look at what's happening in Sproat Lake, or just happening downstream. It's all, you know, it's all combined. And the second mitigation option was to look at construction or road levels around Highway 4 at the Seashot First Nation, so just over the Orange Bridge area. And certainly there's some options or possibilities. I would just note that any mitigation measures need to be carefully considered and should include full participation of all the parties impacted. So, you know, again, we can't just look at in isolation raising Highway 4. What are the implications to other areas? You know, specifically, what are the implications on to Seashot First Nation lands? You know, and certainly, you know, my view on this is that they absolutely would have to be full participants in looking at anything, and a thorough analysis of all the impacts on the mitigation would need to be looked at. So I wanted to highlight sort of those two things, point out that there was other mitigation areas identified. The report certainly talks about you know, the different types of mitigation. So you can do physical mitigation. You can also remove development outside of the danger area, which is you know, always you know, a sort of the best approach. In some cases, that's not always possible. So we'll need to look at that. So I just, you know, briefly to talk about next steps, and I'm almost done, is we want to make sure that the plan was public, so that the community and the directors, you know, and staff, we can all fully talk about it. And that's what we're doing here. We want to make sure that the report's provided to our government partners that were also involved, and so staff at the city Seashot New Benches have been provided a copy of the report, and the maps are available. To post the information on our website, I'm going to work with Amy Wilson to get all of that information onto the website, sort of beyond the agenda, and really trying to work out how to get the maps on there, because they're just massive files, right, to try and download. And we want to discuss board direction. That's part of the recommendations on getting more information, and what direction we want to go to, and then consider also if some outside expertise, if we need some additional expertise, or, you know, depending on the direction that we want to go. And I think this is a good point for me just to at least pause and maybe stop and answer some questions that anybody, our directors, have. And I would note, certainly I'll try and answer the questions that we have. I've gone through this report several times. Each time I go through it, I sort of learn or note something new. So I may not be able to answer all the questions, but we will certainly make note of them and get back to them and include that in reporting back to you. So I will stop right there.
So I had to attack this about 3 times. I had to read a bit of it, go back, read it again. Yeah. So, do we get any questions with regards to this, Dakota?
Thank you. Very complex report, and the implications are quite broad as far as our requirements coming for our OCP, and everything from that, building setbacks. There's a lot here to change the way that we do business today. Along with this report, I had mentioned earlier also that I'd really like to see a supply for another grant to do another report on drought, because flood is one side of the coin, but drought is also a problem, and fish habitat destruction by flood and then drought is part of what we'd like to address with with anything that we do moving forward. So I'd really like to see us apply for a grant. If not, I did ask that that be part of this scope of work, but it doesn't fit into what the grant paid for. So maybe I'll just start there and see what staff have to say.
Okay, yeah, so certainly within the parameters that this was a fully funded project through the province and the federal government, and specifically looking at flood. So it also did not look at tsunami impacts. That was something that was also not included in there. So this is just specifically to flood. You know, as you know, as part of the board's strategic plan, we can always look at what drought options are. I think there is options for moving forward. Certainly, the report, in this report specifically to the flooding aspects, there is other grants available. You know, certainly that would be looking at other work around risk assessments and then what mitigation options are. And I think that, my advice is that's part of the discussion. So there's some mitigation options that may be very specific to certain areas and may not even apply to the, say, the rural areas of the regional district. There might be some that are specific to the city of Port Alberni or specific to the First Nations lands. I think there's others that would be broader and could be a more combined or regional approach where the regional district takes the lead if that's what the board wishes to do. This information, obviously talking about the specific mitigation options, the Ministry of Transportation is fully involved in this. So this involves other levels of government as well. And then also the other part of that is, as Director Cote mentioned, is looking at it from the context of our OCPs and some of the planning documents. So this can go from a full floodplain bylaw. So there's specific legislation that allows us to develop a floodplain bylaw through OCP developments, as well as just in our zoning bylaw, we establish the flood setback. So once we have known flood maps, if the board were to adopt this, and I'm just speaking for the rural areas of the regional district, because within CSHA and the city of Port Alberni, they would do their own planning and an assessment. It's often very similar, but I don't want to speak for them and how that would be approached. Is that if the board proceeds and adopts the flood construction maps, which are the 15 map sheets that we have within the rural areas, that becomes the new setback for construction or habitable construction of habitable space. So it was important to bring this to a committee, have some time to discuss it, have the community and those areas, have an opportunity to look at it and think about it before we bring this back to the board. And there certainly has been delays on this, because of COVID. That we hope to bring this back earlier. So those are some things to think about. So we can, there's on page, which is why I attached the provincial guidelines. There's some sort of a scale of things that they can do, and sort of at the top is the floodplain maps through development permits, through setbacks and zoning bylaws. And then there's also a section of the act that just allows building inspectors to assess hazard areas and then apply through covenants, put restrictions on. I mean, sort of my advice is having a consistent approach so that each property is dealt with in the same manner, which is what we currently do through our zoning bylaw setbacks. And because we have the zoning bylaw setbacks, doesn't mean that we couldn't also include development permits or a floodplain bylaw if that's the direction we want to go. Just it's time and resources to create all of these things. So that I think is an important part of the discussion as well. Hopefully that was helpful. It was long-winded again.
Director Cote.
Thank you. I went through this, and I'm sure I'll be through it a few more times. There's other issues that I think really need to be addressed also, and that's the geomorphology and how the river bank is being eroded. I know that this is one of the concerns in Sprout Lake area, especially the Arrowvale property is being eroded quite drastically. There, and I believe that's what the picture is in here. Page 27. I think that's from that area. Not quite sure, but it looks like it.
I think it's just upstream. Yeah, yes, it's on our. This is on the Stamp River, so it would be up above the.
Oh, okay. But this is very typical of what's happening along the river as well.
Yeah.
So I think that I'd really like to see a little more of focus on addressing some of these issues going forward.
Mhm.
I know that like this is such a huge project, but this is another issue that's happening with the flooding because it comes down and erodes. So if there's something we can do to include that in what we're looking at as far as properties, because the lake is a different type of flooding than the rivers. The river is a flash flood that washes everything away, where the lake just rises and then goes down. So,
and that's a really important. I think that's a really important point and concept in looking at this. In that, while all flooding, where it's damaging property or causing environmental damage is bad. Moving water and the volumes that flow through this system in the rivers, there's very significant differences and dangers than just rising and falling water. So yes, and I'm I think some of that is also can be included in like what risk assessments and mitigation options. So that definitely falls into that category. So how we move forward. And I think it's important that we as staff, we would like some direction, and not full direction, but a sense of where the board would like to go. So this is an excellent discussion on that, so that we can then put together a work plan. And really, it has to be in pieces. It can't be like, we're going to come back next board meeting and here's the solution for it. I mean, this is certainly a significant amount of work.
You can't do that.
Yeah. So I think that's from the drought to our the bank stability. Those things are all important, and we can certainly I'm taking notes and include how we would address those, and come back with some options about what could be priorities moving forward.
So in my previous life, I lived for 15 years between number 2600 and 2700. There are numbers on this downstream from Sprout Lake. And my observations are different than their observations as far as restriction and flow. I mean, I didn't observe that there was a large restriction or large backup in that area that they're marking, but I did observe that from halfway between there and up, there would be restriction up there. I mean, up where Bob's Rock is basically seemed to be an area that was more restrictive than the rest, and that's not science. That's 26 years or 15 years of living there. So their observations are different. Talked to the founder of Bob's Rock, and his observation and their observations, that committee, it is like mine, but we're not scientists, so I guess we have to kind of go with that.
No, and I think that's and those are valid points, and I expect to hear from other other people. So, you know, that's part of the discussion, you know, is do we need some experts, you know, other expertise. So, you know, staff here, like we can take it so far, but getting into the specifics of the modeling and the hydrology around this, you know, certainly we can bring in outside experts. Again, I think that's just an important part of the discussion because, you know, if that's what the directors feel is important or want, I fully support that. So I think that's you know, again, something that we can arrange to do.
Oops.
There's just the cost of doing that as well. So I wanted to bring this part forward, and then we can certainly bring in some expertise.
So we got hands waving all over the place here. So I'm not sure whose hand was up first, but we'll start with Diane and go from there.
Thank you. This was massive. It was mind-boggling reading this. To follow up what you've just said, Mike, I'm wondering if, you know, bringing in the expertise who have done these studies or do these studies, I'm sure we don't have to reinvent the wheel. But could they possibly come together at the table and talk about this, about the floodplain in Port Alberni specifically, and be able to find a starting point? Where do we start, you know, and breaking it down into pieces rather than looking at this whole big thing that is quite mind-boggling. So I'm sure Port Alberni isn't the only place that have had to deal with flooding issues in BC. So it would be nice to see, I think, some more expertise at the table to discuss this specifically. And I don't know whether that's really done or not. Thank you.
Director Haggard, I think, is next.
No, I didn't have my hand up, Director McNabb.
You
I think
didn't.
Director Shannon did.
You were just waving hi to us. Anybody else? So we need a motion of some sort here. Oh, Director, where? Oh, you're so dark there that I can hardly see.
I just had a question because the Agriculture Development Committee has a grant going for that Vancouver climate change grant for, I probably botched what it's called. Is there an opportunity to do some flood work stuff under that one when we talk about stuff like Arravale Farm and stuff along the river?
Absolutely. I think that has to be part of that discussion, and because it is exactly what that would be looking at. I think the aspects from I think it's a system change grant that we're applying for would be specific to agriculture. You know, both flooding and access to water. You know, would certainly drought has to be included in that as well. So that could be a component for agriculture, and you know, certainly this work and reports and maps are all available for that as well. So absolutely.
Yes, Cote.
Thank you. I would think that there needs to be, the next step would be talking with First Nations and also the city, probably Beaver Creek Water, the Ag Development group, trying to at least pass this around and get some feedback from those different partners moving forward. So they may have some suggestions. I know I agree with Director McNabb that I didn't agree with everything that was written in the report as far as how they used parts, and their discoveries aren't exactly what I thought. They missed out flooding at Sprout Lake in some of the timeline. There's a few little things that really don't matter in the big scope of things, but I think that we really do need to expand out and put this report out. And I know that it has gone to Tishat. I'm not sure about the Hoopachesset. And I'm sure that the city must have seen it already.
Yeah.
So any feedback there, I think, is really important at this time.
So certainly, I mean, our intention is to get this on our website, sort of not just on the agenda, so that it's available there. We'll add the information. We have a SOMAS watershed, or the SOMAS watershed flood management plan section of our website. So I just got to make sure I'll work with other staff to get that on there as well.
Right.
I thought it was important that the directors that for the area that it's affected saw it, sort of had the first crack at input and saw this.
Right.
I didn't want you hearing about it from somebody else. So that's really the first step, and I think then breaking it down into the two sections. There's the mitigation option. So next steps as far as what can we do to mitigate sort of on a regional scale, and that's working with the city and CSHOT and other government agencies and partners. And then there's also the component that is more for the electoral area services, specific to our bylaws. So that's where our bylaws come in, around, do we incorporate this into future OCP work? Does the board, and I'm not asking for any decisions right now, does the board want to consider a floodplain bylaw? And that's the purpose of the recommendations, sort of 2 and 3, as recommend that staff investigate mitigation options. That's kind of a regional or sub-regional scale, and then recommendations on applying the 200-year flood maps within the electoral areas is sort of the other component. I think the third one is a little bit more time of the essence, in that we now know this. We don't want to leave it for a long period of time because there's construction and things happening, and there's an ability to start applying it now. I need to do a little bit more work on sort of the actual mechanics of that. But then there's also some of the longer mid-range planning that would need to go in it. So we don't need to make any changes to our zoning bylaw to implement it, because our current zoning bylaw and the proposed zoning bylaw cover this, address the flood construction levels where we know them. But if we want to look at more development permit requirements or guidelines to reflect this knowledge, then which I would, when I write a report, that's sort of my first inclination, is that's the step to go. And then if we, some more information, some outside expertise could explain floodplain mapping a little bit more, could be like a third step if that's where we want to go.
Okay.
I'll make the motion then.
Okay. So
I'll make the recommendation that the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Service Committee, 1, receive the staff report. Do you want them all together? Yeah.
That's fine, yes.
2, recommend the board of directors that staff investigate mitigation options, and 3, recommend to the board of directors that staff provide options for applying for the 200-year floodplain map within the electoral areas of ACRD.
okay, seconder. Got a bunch of them. Just to say that any mitigation is going to cause other issues.
Yes.
So we really have to be aware of that, whether it's on Sprout Lake, Great Central Lake, the Highway 4 issue, it's going to push the water somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So it's have to be very well thought out.
Absolutely.
Unless we're going to get a degree in this particular course, I guess we need to, got a motion on the floor. Any other questions? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
The other thing I wanted to mention is we do have hard copies of the maps here. I meant to mention it earlier. Certainly, we can set up a time for any directors or any members of the public that want to come in and look at it to go over that. They're ours. We own them. We could, we're providing them to the other government agencies as well. But certainly, that's something that's there. Especially while we try to get them onto the website. But I know trying to download them onto a personal computer could be a challenge even when we get them on our website.
So, Director Cote.
Thank you. Could I have a couple of a set of copy of the maps, and I'll put them up at the Sprout Lake Hall because residents are playing pickleball there, and they could see and just a notes as to where to look for the report, because I know these maps are
Sure.
hard to see on.
Oh,
Yeah, so let's
There
do
you
that
are.
after about which map would be best.
Okay. I have another.
Director Cote, or
Thank you.
Director Shannon has a question, sorry. She's kind of a
Okay.
contrasted out, can't kind of see her.
Secretive that way.
Yeah.
Question about the mitigation concepts that were in the report. There's 9 of them that are there. And forgive me if I missed it because it's a big report. Was there any discussion about mitigation in the sense of looking beyond where the flood is, but more like up in the mountains, and see if we can do any mitigation, like proactive mitigation? Like, could we get like tree planting or grant money or any kind of that route going to help with this as well?
So great question. That was not part of the study. There was some climate change, or there was climate change factored into this, but no, it was not an assessment of the watershed as a whole. So in the report, it certainly talks about this is a very large watershed. When you start looking at what comes into Great Central and Sprout Lake as a watershed, the area was very specific to really it's in the report, but it's the very end of Sprout Lake and Great Central Lake, down through the river systems to the harbor in the Alberni Valley Inlet, covering the city of Port Alberni. So, but that's certainly some things that can be looked at. We'd have to explore.
Okay, on the next thing, a review of flat rate for, pardon me? Oh,
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion, actually, that we ask staff to investigate another grant similar to the federal grant that we received. I think it was provincial also. Federal provincial grant.
This one was a combined provincial and federal.
Grant to look at drought that would accompany this report. Thank you.
a seconder on that? Yep, Dr. Shannon. Okay, any discussion on that? All in favor? Opposed? Okay, let's try that again because we have either a lot of late in favors or some opposed. So all in favor? Opposed? There we go. That kind of fits. Probably the time lag to Bamfield. Okay, so now we are moving on to flat branches and yard waste.
Okay, to the chair. We changed our yard waste rates in May. What we previously had was a per tonnage rate for branches over a certain size, and then under a certain size were accepted for free. The original intent of that was to encourage less burning in the valley. So we had some concerns with that, and it was challenging in a number of ways. So we looked at a $5 flat rate for loads. And what that meant is that anything that was branch related that would require chipping, we would charge $5, no charge for grass and leaves. That's been in effect since May. And what we found is that we looked at the costs of that because we really weren't sure if this was going to help us to start recovering some of the costs. When we looked at how much we received in our revenues versus how much it cost us to chip and process, previous to the change, we were making about $5 to $7 a ton. And now when you average it out, it's about $22 a ton, which is better. Our cost is still approximately $25 a ton. So we'd like to keep monitoring this to see if we can actually get it to a full cost recovery rate at some point. But the $5 rate is just a really nice rate that people don't seem to mind paying. We were concerned about people starting to do illegal dumping. We haven't really seen much. It's hard though, because we don't monitor illegal dumping per se, but we haven't seen much more discussion or observations of an increase in that manner. So that's good. We're also, again, as I mentioned, with the 3-stream organics, we're going to see yard waste collection within the city boundaries in the organics bins, which will be nice. And the good news with the Fire Smart program, which was also implemented, which took a bit of pressure off potential negative consequences here. We had a free drop-off event at 4 locations, which did fairly well. And then we operated a curbside request program. So for residents who really can't haul materials to the landfill or for whatever reason, and we had 46 requests for that program. So it's been relatively successful. And staff have received an extension, so they're going to continue to run that grant program in the spring. We will apply again, but if we have no grant funding, we do not intend to continue to run that. So we'll have to continue to take a look at that as we go. And I
So,
think that's everything.
One thing I'd like to suggest is that the regional district advertise the options for leaf branches and leaves, all of the options, so that I mean, there's lots of other places taking them besides the landfill, and I mean, it really, you know, on a cost recovery basis, it doesn't matter if it goes to the landfill on our behalf. So if it goes somewhere else and they can make it, fine. So I really suggest that we step up that advertising, that identification of those options, so they don't end up in the bush.
I will take the opportunity to plug our Waste Wizard app, which if you look up yard waste on there, it identifies all of the options, commercial and otherwise, but that's not advertising.
No, and you know, it's got to be simple and repetitive, and otherwise people aren't going to get it. You have your hand up? Oh,
Thank you. So are you in contact with Mosaic and the community forest regarding debris that's being dumped?
I haven't reached out. We do work with them, obviously, to waive fees when they do cleanup events for illegal dumping, because we have a certain amount set aside for that, but nothing in an organized fashion. At this point, we don't have resources for that.
so we're done with that one. On to the next one, the other book.
Lovely. Okay, so I'd like to try to share my screen and pull up the pictures for. All right, so in the agenda package, you will see these design drawings. But what this is we're looking at doing the landfill, Alberni Valley landfill upgrades. This is part of our strategic grant that we received for organics diversion. It included making changes at the landfill to divert organics. So this will allow us to accommodate the city's split trucks so that they can drop off organics and recycling and solid waste. And it also provides funding for us to address some of our other diversion streams. So we've had a lot, as there is, solid waste is a very broadly changing landscape. We've had changes in the Recycle BC hauler, which means that they have asked us to use roll-off bins more instead of the mega bags. So that's made a big change at our landfill. So we're trying to accommodate that. And then just improving sort of commercial recycling diversion streams. We've added mattresses. We have a lot going on at the landfill. So it's wonderful timing to be looking at how we can basically change and upgrade the layout to address all of that. So I'm going to start at the top of our proposed layout changes here. So we've got a big one for overflow and bin storage area. And a lot of that has to do with these roll-off containers and managing the flow of materials through the landfill. So now, right now, it's GFL that is hauling those materials. So we've asked for extra bins, and that's basically, if you've been in the landfill over the past year, sometimes those fiber bins were overflowing. It was very frustrating for us. So now they've given us extra bins and we can switch them out, which is good, but we also need, that means a staging area for that material, as well as for scrap metal and other things. And that's a good thing because it does allow us to make more efficiencies for hauling so that when every load leaves, no matter what they're doing, it's usually hauling 2 roll-off bins, which does reduce greenhouse gases for transportation. So that's nice. And it gives us some flexibility on site. As well, you'll see in here is a commercial lane. So right now, our scale house has 1 commercial scale, and it faces, so the scale attendant gets to stand at the scale shack, take people through, but then also has a really good view of all of the public tipping area. Because of the current layout, we aren't well set up to have an in and out scale that you see at other transfer stations and landfills. And it would require significant reconfiguration, blasting of rock, a whole bunch of stuff in order to actually change the layout for the scale. And in fact, it's a really good layout. And in theory, for the population that we serve, again, we're trying to manage traffic flows. It is well designed. And we really like the idea that you've got 1 scale attendant who's helping to provide that line of sight over the public tipping area, and then they can communicate via radios, and it's just very functional from a staff and operational perspective. However, we are concerned about additional traffic and allowing the city trucks a quick turnaround if they've got a double load to tip. So we are looking at a commercial scale, and it would basically, it wouldn't affect residential traffic. So they would still come in, circle around if necessary, or circle through and leave if that was the flow, right? So if I'm just coming in with 2 bags of garbage and my recycling, I can go drop my garbage where I need to, drop my recycling and leave. But if I have a weighed material, then I have to loop back around on the scale, which is the existing situation. The new scale really would just be a bypass lane for commercial traffic going to the active face. Pardon me. So that would allow them to, instead of waiting in the line with the residents, they could go in a VIP lane or basically a fast track lane and go straight up to the back. But it would only, again, help them if they're going to the active face, not if they need to go and do any of the diversion, because we're still keeping all of the diversion contained in the 1 area. So if we look down at the bottom area, which I've been referring to, the changes that we're going to be making down here, if I can start in the bottom left-hand corner where we have the city transfer area discussion. So that really is the accommodation we're putting in for tipping for organics and recycling. So when the split trucks come from the city and they have half of a load of organics and half of a load of waste, what they'll do is they'll go drop off the organics and tip into the organics bin there. They go back around, weigh again, and then go to the active face to drop off solid waste and then go out. So it is the most efficient situation we can come up with them. Consequently, if they're doing a load of organics and recycling, they would come through, dump the organics, they have to loop back through the scale, drop off the recycling, and then be on their way. We're looking to see if there's a better way that we can monitor that, but we have to work with Recycle BC because they're very detailed on how you weigh each load of recycling and where it comes from. But in theory, we wouldn't need them to go through that scale twice. But if we do, again, there's concerns and it might be worth putting in a second scale to expedite traffic. So that's for the city transfer area. If you continue along the bottom side, we've got the area for mattresses, which we currently have. We'll probably be looking at expanding that a little bit. And then we have the asbestos, which is actually right now we've had to relocate it because of the public recycling area, but it's going to be down alongside of the drywall. We'll have the leaves and grass and branches, and then the overflow wood waste area, which is normally up top, we're putting down here. And again, it's just really allows the people who are working with the staff in the public area a lot better time to, it's just so much easier to facilitate. So the public area that you guys are familiar with right now has where it says commercial recycling. If you've been there recently, you'll know that that's where you would do your residential recycling. So you can go, you tip your garbage metal at the wall, and then behind you, you do your residential recycling. So again, with all of our diversion streams and all of the expanded products, we really need a much bigger recycling area. So what we're looking to do is basically push out and build a whole new recycling area titled recycling area. In the new tipping wall there is where we're going to put those roll-off bins. One of the pieces of feedback we're getting a lot is it's too high, it's difficult to get at. So these are going to be semi sunken. They're not going to go all the way down, but it'll be semi-sunken, so it'll be a lot easier for everyone to be putting the materials directly into those slotted holes, which is wonderful. And we have a lot of roll-off bins that they want to be using for the Recycle BC material. So we're allowing for that there. We're shifting the appliances area into there and the bike shed area there. And then we have all the new diversion streams that we've added recently, which is paint, electronics, lights, batteries, and then the mega bags like styrofoam and glass that'll still be there. And we're going to create a new covered area that'll be see-through so that the scale shack can still view it with line of sight from where they're looking, but it'll be covered so it's protected from rain, and it'll be fenced and gated for security, because electronics can attract thieves and we don't want that. So we need to secure that. And that gives us a bit of room where the residential recycling used to be in the public area for more commercial recycling. And we see more and more demand for that. Unfortunately, we still have to charge for commercial recycling, but we have added the streams for the cardboard, and we will be looking at adding an opportunity for people to also drop off mixed containers at a very low rate. But we have to keep that separate from the Recycle BC materials currently. We hope that that'll change down the road, but we have to accommodate that. We've looked at this, and it also, so with all of the tipping walls added, it gives us a lot of flexibility because we know the landscape's going to continue to change. And so we want to make sure that we have that. So we're going to be adding 3 walls down below for the city transfer area and 4 walls at the recycling area. And if we need to at any time, we can repaint the lines, reallocate, resign. That takes nothing. So we're pretty confident that this is going to be a good layout. We've been consulting with the city drivers to see how they think this is going to work. They're putting their minds to a lot of things right now because it's going to be quite a bit different when they go to 3-stream. So we're talking about a lot of logistics with them. We also had the AV haulers meeting, talking with all of the commercial haulers just maybe last 2 weeks ago. I can't remember. It wasn't that long ago. Again, talking about the changes at the landfill, among other things. And I think that's probably everything. Is there questions?
So is that on the first picture? No, the second picture.
Mm-hmm.
Is that line that goes up there, is that the property line for the landfill that goes through the container parking area?
That's correct.
So is that other property zoned correctly to put that in there?
It is.
Okay. Okay, any other questions on the little wee area I've got there? Don't see, oh, where we got, yes. Director Sherry Minions. That's what you're scheduled as.
Well, thank you very much. A couple quick questions. One, in regards to the second waste scale, would it not be possible to take an average of the amount of weight that comes through these commercial vehicles and just apply that across the board, or is that something that Recycle BC wouldn't go for?
Do you mean for garbage or just for recycling?
Well, the purpose of this second waste scale you were talking about, is that for recycling, garbage, all of the above?
It would mainly actually be for garbage going to the active phase, so back to where it's getting landfilled, and it would just speed up the process so they could shoot through instead of waiting in the traffic lineup. And we will need to continue to weigh that for our own benefit, because we need to know how much garbage we're putting into the landfill. And more data is so much better for that, because all of our numbers are directly related to how much we're landfilling, how long our landfill will last, a lot of information.
Well, has anybody ever looked to see if the weight varies very much?
It certainly does. It depends. If you've got a load coming in that is heavy, is moist, it'll be significantly heavier. The trucks can vary in weight depending on where they're picking up. There's huge variability. We do try to save time with tears. So the trucks themselves are, we know how much a truck weighs. So we'll get a base weight with it empty, but that can vary too, depending on how much gas is in the truck or not so much, but a little bit about the weight of the truck driver. But we get an average of what those weights are, and we'll put it into our computer system with tears. So that's why right now, when the commercial vehicles go through, they wait in line with the residents. They go through the first scale, they tip, and then they leave without going over a scale again at that point, because we can't get them to wait in line again, right? So this is actually a double scale for 2 incoming scales. We already don't have an outgoing scale for that commercial, which is as efficient as we can manage at the time.
Okay, my second question is in regards to that reconfiguration of the landfill. You talked about the shed with the bicycles. Is there any other area where if you've got something that has value, you could put it aside so someone else could use it? It seems like that would be the greatest way of recycling, would be to reuse things that otherwise are just tossed out. And I see all kinds of stuff. And I've just recently threw something out that I knew full well had value, but I had no way of passing it on.
Excellent comment. I 100% support this. In other communities, you'll see restores. We have secondhand stores, but it doesn't really catch. And what I find where we have a hole in the Alberni Valley is with the larger stuff, right? Construction materials that could be reused, more of a restore concept. I have on the side, when I possibly can, have been trying so hard to encourage Restore to come and move into Port Alberni. If we open up something like that, the amount of staffing required to manage that goes up significantly. So it really is a new additional service we would have to look at. Also, and we like to encourage private businesses. So the secondhand stores, there's quite a few of them in town. They do well. Again, the Restore sort of has a mission just to focus on that. We encourage people to use Marketplace and other opportunities, but I would love to see a Restore. I don't know if I would like to see it at the landfill per se, because it's just not as good a fit. We would really rather keep the recycling, the stuff that has to get processed, not reused. Even the bicycles, if we had a Restore, I would probably say, let's tell people to take them to the Restore.
Okay, thank you. And lastly, I just want to thank you for answering my question about a week ago. Twice now, I've had people that have home-based businesses talk about having to pay to recycle cardboard. I didn't realize that's a Recycle BC issue, but some of these people are very small players, and it does seem kind of counterintuitive, where we want to encourage recycling, and yet we're penalizing people that may throw out half a dozen cardboard boxes every week or two.
Okay. Oh boy, we got hands waving all over the place here. So did you have your hand up, Director Coulter? So Director Bodner.
Thank you. I've always thought that it's a shame to see those things in the garbage that other people can use as well. I'm wondering, Jenny, if you have ever asked, how does Nanaimo manage their Restore and the one up in Comox too? If there isn't some way where it may not take so much of the staff time to deal with it. Because there's, number one, it's bulky. Number two, it can be reused, and it seems like a good idea. Anyway, I support what Ron was saying. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's through Habitat for Humanity that they've established Restores, and they're very successful because they also will end up using some of the products that come through to help build houses. And so I've been in touch with the Nanaimo Habitat for Humanity, and COVID hit, so that conversation hasn't really moved forward because they're challenged with how do you run a Restore in COVID times, and I am hoping to continue that conversation. It's just not a high priority as well at the time. We have so many other things that are pressing, but it is very important and will be nice to do at some point. And I think using the Habitat for Humanity model is best because it provides so many other benefits to the community, including housing. So I think if we can encourage them to come here into the valley, that would be the best solution.
Okay, any other questions? Director Cote.
Not a question. I was just thinking about that. Possibly the real estate. I know that realtors do a lot of work on homes. This might be something that they might like to get involved with. So I'll ask the people that I know and send them your way. And just like to say thanks. I love the design. I think that this will help. I was one of those people who got calls regarding this is too high and nobody can help me to recycle at the landfill. So great design, and look forward to going out there and checking it out. Thanks.
So maybe the city representatives could get our economic development person office to knock on a couple of doors and declare an opportunity. Okay, so when you have a motion there in front of us, somebody want to make that motion? Receive the reports. Oh, Director
Oh,
Jack,
somebody else?
Director Jack, I think.
Okay,
Yeah, and seconder.
second.
Okay. Anything else on this? All in favor? Opposed? Okay, we're carried. No late business? We're already late. In question period, have we got anybody online?
Mr. Chair, no, we have no one participating on the Zoom meeting today, and no input was received at our email address. So no input.
Man, they don't know what they missed. My goodness. Okay, anything else? Motion to adjourn? Somebody want to stay? Director Jack and Director Beckett, I think. Okay, all in favor? Are you voting opposed there, Director Beckett, or no? Carried. Okay, let's see you at the next meeting.
This is really strange being here.
See ya.
See you, John.